Hi everyone, it's Alan with Earthglow. Welcome back to another new video. In today's video, we are going to be making some wax melts. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, what we normally use to make wax melts is a blend of two different waxes, and that is going to be IGI 6006 and IGI 4625. Now, when you are making melts, I've had a lot of people ask if you could just use the same wax that you use for your container candles. Well, you technically can, but I wouldn't recommend it. The reason is, when you are pouring wax into clamshells, what people will do when they get those clamshells is pop that wax right out. And the wax that you use for container candles is usually going to have a much softer consistency to it. It'll often have a much lower melt point, but the consistency is really the problem. So it won't pop out of the clamshells very easily. But there's a lot of people who do it. I mean, gosh, I know people who make wax melts out of 464 soy or coconut apricot Cetacerica. It makes me cringe, but you can do it. And a lot of people think that they make successful melts that way. And they can. As in, they can sell a lot. I would say also that the quality of the melts does suffer a bit because the waxes just don't provide the same amount of time that the fragrance will release. So the blend of IGI 4625 and IGI 6006 that I do, the fragrance release is ridiculous. Like, some of these melts, you could put 2 cubes in your melter and it would last you for days. Now, it depends on the scent. They don't all come through exactly the same. There is going to be variance just depending on the fragrance notes, even though I generally will use the same percentage for my wax melts, which is around 12.5%. But yeah, it's incredible the longevity that you get with these 2 waxes. And I'll have my exact blend in my Patreon. So if you are interested in checking that out, there's a link to join below. But this video, as always, goes over the whole process of making the melts. I've actually also used my beeswax soy cocoa cream wax blend in wax melts before. The problem with that blend is actually a similar problem to using like 464 soy or using coconut apricot Cetacerica or a lot of these waxes that container waxes that people will use. It just doesn't have the same longevity. So what I mean by that is, you could put 2 cubes or 3 cubes in your melter and you might only smell that scent for a couple hours as opposed to a day or 2. Another thing I want to talk about is this piston funnel. So I know I always talk about it, but if you were going to get one, wax melts would be like my top recommendation to use it for. I can't tell you how hard these things are for me to pour, and I have pretty steady hands too, but I've always struggled to pour these. I think part of it is because my countertops go so far back and I can't get around like the other side of them because there's a wall right there. I mean, kind of a challenge. But yeah, these piston funnels, they like extend your arm almost, and they allow for that precision and control. Now, what I will say is, with this blend of waxes, you do have to pour pretty fast. So each of these piston funnels will hold about 25 ounces of wax plus fragrance. Well, about 25 ounces of wax and then your fragrance on top. So I guess maybe a little under 30 ounces in total is what I will fill them to. And once I have mixed in my fragrance in my pouring pitchers, I will directly pour them into these piston funnels. So I'll only have 2 pouring pitchers going at a time when I'm doing melts, because this blend just sets up really fast. And what can happen if you pour it once it is too cold is you can start getting like air bubbles. And those can be very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to get out. Because if you try to heat gun over them with these plastic clamshells, the plastic will just warp. It's not really possible. So the best way I found, if you do get an air bubble, and maybe you'll see me doing it in this video because I usually do, is to quickly pop it with a creme brulee torch on the very lowest setting, just literally pressing the ignition button. And hopefully, I think I do have some footage of that later on in the video, so you'll be able to see it. Now, the clamshells that I use for these, I get them on Amazon, honestly, for the best price. I'll have the ones I'm using linked below. They're under 20 cents each. Sometimes you can get them for like 16 cents. I've thought about using snap bars and different types of containerless wax melts where there's no plastic involved. But the problem is, well, I've had a number of different problems because I've actually tried pursuing that. And one of the biggest problems is you can't get the fragrance out of the molds very easily. You know the little silicone molds that you'll go to pour your wax and fragrance in once you've, when you've got your snap bar ready? Those silicone molds, they absorb a lot of that fragrance. And so what's hard is when you're trying to clean them to actually get the scent all the way out. So you'd have to almost dedicate one to each scent or one to each scent family. And I just think that that is not the route I would want to go. Plus, it's harder to scale because you'd have to have so many of those different molds. And I also just, I don't know, there's something about just the traditional six cavity clamshells that I really like. People can also recycle the plastic. We use PET plastic that is 100% recyclable, so that is a nice feature as well. And I also like just being able to put the nice labels on these. I also grew up with these too. Actually, I grew up with the Yankee Candle ones. My mom used to have, they were tarts, so they looked like a little like piece of pie almost. But they had the picture on them, and yeah, there's something about the colors in the picture that always gets me. And customers love that too. I've tried to go the more natural route with the packaging on these, where I've used like the craft labels and had a more minimal looking color. But customers generally do like the bright colors, I've found. So I have some videos too, if you're interested on how I design like labels for these. So you can check those out. I'll try to link them in the description box as well as above if you're interested in how I do my labels. Because ink can get very expensive, and if you have just a simple HP NV6000 series, for example, which I'll link the one that I use below, you can get an ink plan through HP and you pay for it by the page. So you can print full saturation image quality graphics for literally a few cents a click. A lot of people don't know about that. That's part of the reason I have multiple printers too, because when I'm doing something like printing packing slips or just like black and white paper, where there's, you know, a little bit of text on paper, or even for more minimal labels, or for labels like you'll use in the shower when you need that label to be more water resistant, I will use a laser printer because that uses toner rather than ink. So it just generally works better for those types of purposes. Anyways, you can see I've got a popsicle stick kind of going down the center here, and that usually divides my different fragrances. Now today I'm pouring Raise That Shit, which uses White Sage and Lavender by Candle Science, as well as Vinyasa Flow, which uses Brandied Pear by Candle Science. Please bring back the original, by the way. I will not be repurchasing the clean scent version. The original is so good. Well, the clean scent, it just smells like bubblegum to me. So I still have some of the original, but yeah, the clean scent isn't where it's at for Brandied Pear. Actually, Midwest has one that's called, I'll put the name on the screen for you, that smells like the original Brandied Pear. Much more so than the clean scent does. Okay, so you can see right here what I just did with that little creme brulee torch. I'll have that guy linked for you as well below, but it's a really nice tool for this. I'm literally not even like hardly going on any setting, but I'll look for these teeny tiny air bubbles. Sometimes they can happen if you pour at a little bit too cool of a temperature, or sometimes if you stir a little too fast, you can incorporate some air. But this will absolutely get rid of it. And you can see me kind of scoping out, looking for them. So normally what I'll do is I'll do my initial pour, and then once I get kind of close to the top and I've done all of them of that scent, then I'll come back around and basically level them off. I know there's a lot of people who don't like to do that, but if I'm a customer, I kind of feel like I'm getting gypped a little bit if it's not flush with the top of the clamshell. I know, I'm like 5 years old, but that's just how I feel. So I want to make sure all my customers get a nice full melt, a nice full clamshell. Now, I like to put the warning label on the inside of these, and I do have a special warning label that I designed specifically for wax melts. They're not the exact same ones that I use for candles at all. And I'm actually going to put a template in my Patreon for our wax melt warning labels. Kind of has some of that legal information that you need to have on there. Now, this is specific to the United States. So if you are in a different country, then I can't speak for that. A lot of people ask, why doesn't the wax evaporate when you're doing a wax melt like it does when you're doing a candle? Well, it's interesting because when you are making a wax melt, the way the fragrance is released is by that bulb. So you'll typically use a 20 to 25 watt bulb, and it will heat those wax molecules, and essentially the fragrance will become airborne when it vaporizes. And so the fragrance just dissipates into the air. There's no chemical reaction taking place. It's just a physical reaction. So the fragrance changes locations. It goes from being bound to the wax molecules to being bound to the air molecules. When you burn a candle, that's a chemical reaction called a combustion reaction. And what happens there is as that wax is drawn up into the wick by capillary action, so it kind of sucks it right up into the wick, it vaporizes. And when it vaporizes, it comes in contact with oxygen in the air and oxidizes, in other words, burns, and those vapors are what we detect as the aroma. So it's a combination of aroma coming from the flames as well as from the heated melted wax. But it's a chemical reaction because there's actually burning taking place. So those vapors that are coming from by the flames are not just a change in state of the fragrance, but they are a burning of the wax. So the wax does kind of evaporate, but it doesn't just evaporate into the air where you can take it back out. It transforms into carbon dioxide and water. And that water is a vapor. It's not it's more like steam. And there's also heat and light that are released. And that heat and light is evidence of a chemical reaction. So it's really cool. I'll link some of my science videos below too if you guys are interested in those. They're very fun to film. You can kind of see what I'm doing with this torch. This guy takes butane as well. You can get butane. I found the best prices at Walmart or like the hardware store. But I will just go around scoping out bubbles, and when I find them, I will just fill them in. Now, I like to make the most out of my counter space when I'm doing this. So I'll line up all these different clamshells, and then I'll use that back part and make another row. So I'll spin them around the other way so that the top of each kind of lines up. And this is the best way I've found to do it, so that you can maximize your counter space if you're dealing with a more limited area like I am. And it doesn't take very long for these to set up, as you might imagine. The wax has a higher melt point, so it hardens faster. And also, there's a lot of surface area relative to the height. So because of all this surface area, the wax is almost like you spilled it in a little tiny puddle on your countertop. And imagine if you did that, it would harden up pretty fast, wouldn't it? That's exactly how it is when you pour into these shallow little clamshells. There's so much surface area that it takes virtually no time for the wax to become solid, especially when it's a high melt point wax like a lot of these tart waxes or blends that are more suitable for tarts are. So once the wax has totally solidified, and again, I'm just doing that final check with my creme brulee torch, and as I mentioned, I would not use a heat gun for this. I would use the very, very lowest setting just so that you don't even see a flame, and then just barely press that button to get rid of any little air bubbles that you may have. I will add my labels. So the warning labels I add right away, and you can see how beautifully colorful all these exterior labels are. So we also did some Tuscan Plum, Yoga Studio, Vinyasa Flow, Sea Salt Orchid, which I have also renamed that one. This video was filmed like back in the fall, and I have so many videos that I need to actually get out. Let me know if you guys want me to not post older videos. Like I just recorded this voiceover in almost April, but the video footage itself is from like 6 months ago. So if you guys want me to just delete them, I'm happy to do that. But I also, like to make use of my hard work too. But I don't mind if you guys really are like, no, I don't want to see stuff that you have from a while ago. I also oftentimes will delete videos unintentionally too. And I get really frustrated at that. Like if I've lost several scenes in a certain video and I'm like, oh my God, that's so irritating. I have to refilm this whole video, but it happens. Now, I just use the same warning labels for these that I use on most all of our candles. This is the 2-inch size, and I get them from Online Labels. Now, this is their weatherproof matte label for inkjet printers, but you could use the one for laser printers as well. Warning labels, they're mainly, for most people, just kind of a black and white, kind of simpler style, but you can do them however you like. I actually bought these labels a long time ago, and they do go with the exterior labels more that are also weatherproof matte for inkjet printers. So it is kind of a nice fit, but you certainly could do laser with your warning labels if you want to save a little bit. I think they're cheaper to get the laser ones from Online Labels. I'm still trying to change my melt labels to a more rustic look that I've been playing around with at farmers markets, but customers tend to really like these bright colors, and I don't know what it is, but they just do. But I'd wanted to go the more cardstock route just because I like that vibe. It's been doing really well on like our signature collection candles, but yeah, for melts, it hasn't. Not at least these last couple of years at markets, because I've brought a mix. So I've had our melt display where I'll have are regular like collections, and then like some limited edition or seasonal ones. And in the seasonal ones, I'll have in like the cardstock, the like paper type of a label. Yeah, you can see how fast this is too once you've got them all done. But yeah, they consistently go for typically the brighter colors at markets, is what I found. I guess on the website though, I've sold a mix, because I can't say that's true. I should look at my numbers on there for how many I've sold of each different type of label. Because I think that I probably have, I just haven't done nearly as many with the cardstock labels. I did them in, I think, 2023 or 2024 in the fall. I think it was 2023. And I think they did sell out pretty fast on the website. So different markets also cater to, like, also attract different people's tastes for different products. Have you noticed that at all with your products, where your website, certain things will do well, and then at markets, other things will do well, so you have to kind of brand them slightly different, but then you're also like, oh, I want to have continuity within my brand. So then if a customer went on my website, they would know one thing to the next, you know, like if they're looking for a specific scent, it's not going to be called something else. So yeah, I've struggled with all those things and continue to. But you know what? That's just part of the process and part of the journey of it. I think that's about all I've got for this video. If you guys did enjoy, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And again, I'll have my base melt formula in my Patreon, as well as all these different scents that I'm pouring. Anyways, I'm sending all of you peace, love, and light. And I'm wishing all of you happy melt making. I'd like to take the time to thank my patrons for their incredible support.
Trusting your instincts, realize that knowing looks different to each. When living authentic, do more exploring, deeper than knowing just what is essential for life that is thriving. Go deep, mute out the chatter, feel it, burn off the fire. Until there's peace to your core. Live a life you adore. Silence the noise, away from the program, removing performance, true self, all that's standing. Live free from worry, live by just being. Power and finding your wholeness in now. Go deep, mute out the chatter, feel it, burn off the fire. Live
yourself, stay authentic at all costs, and never lose your spark, because that's what makes your brand uniquely you. I see you, I'm rooting for you, and I know you have what it takes to be successful and to have fun with this craft. Until next time, happy candle making.